The summer sun rises blood-red over the Belasica Mountains on July 29, 1014 AD. In the narrow pass of Kleidion, where the Struma River cuts through stone and forest, an army prepares to defy the impossible. The air hangs thick with moisture from the river below, carrying the scent of pine resin and mountain flowers. A deceptive tranquility that will soon be shattered by screams and the clash of steel. Basil II, Emperor of the Byzantine Empire, stands motionless on a rocky outcrop. His weathered face, lined with 56 years of life and 38 years of brutal warfare, betrays no emotion as he surveys the valley below. From this vantage point, the sight that greets him would break the courage of lesser men. Stretched across the mountain pass like a living wall of wood, steel and flesh, 45,000 Bulgarian warriors await. Their fortifications bristle with sharpened stakes, wooden towers, and defensive walls that turn the natural choke point into an impenetrable fortress. Behind Basil, exactly 20,000 Byzantine soldiers prepare for battle. Hardened veterans of countless campaigns, yes, but outnumbered more than 2 to 1. The mathematics are brutally simple. For every Byzantine warrior, more than 2 Bulgarian defenders wait behind fortifications designed specifically to kill invaders. This is not a battle. This is a death sentence. Yet Basil's eyes narrow with calculation, not fear. He has not come this far, fought this long to turn back now. To understand this moment, you must travel back through decades of blood and betrayal. Picture the Byzantine Empire in 976 AD, when a young Basil, barely 18 years old, ascends to the throne of the greatest Christian empire on earth. Constantinople gleams with golden domes and marble palaces, but the empire itself teeters on the edge of chaos. Rebellious generals plot in the provinces. Arab raiders strike from the east. Viking mercenaries sell their swords to the highest bidder. And to the north, across the rugged Balkan mountains, Bulgaria rises like a storm cloud threatening to engulf everything Basil holds dear. The Byzantine-Bulgarian wars have raged for nearly half a century by this point. These are not the civilized conflicts of diplomats and treaties, but savage struggles for survival where entire populations are enslaved or slaughtered, where cities burn and refugees flee by the thousands. Tsar Samuel of Bulgaria, a military genius and ruthless conqueror, has spent 3 decades rebuilding his nation into a power that challenges Byzantine supremacy across the Balkans. Samuel's armies have raided deep into Greece, threatening the very approaches to Constantinople itself. Byzantine tax collectors fear to venture into contested regions. Trade routes that once enriched the empire now lie abandoned, choked with bandits and Bulgarian raiding parties. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. For generations, Byzantine citizens have seen their once mighty empire humiliated by what they consider barbarians from the mountains. For Basil personally, the conflict is even more bitter. In 986 AD, 28 years before this moment, he led an army against Samuel in the mountain pass known as Trajan's Gate. The result was catastrophic. Bulgarian forces ambushed the Byzantine army in a narrow defile, slaughtering thousands and forcing Basil into a humiliating retreat. The young emperor barely escaped with his life, his pride shattered, his military reputation in ruins. That defeat changed Basil fundamentally. The idealistic young ruler transformed into something harder, colder, more calculating. He spent the next decades reorganizing his army, crushing internal rebellions, and launching annual campaigns against Bulgaria with methodical, almost obsessive determination. Year after year, summer after summer, Basil returned to the mountains, capturing fortresses, besieging cities, grinding down Bulgarian resistance through sheer relentless persistence. By 1014, Basil has earned a reputation as one of the most formidable military commanders of his age. But he remains haunted by that defeat at Trajan's Gate. Samuel, now in his late 60s, remains undefeated, his core territories intact, his army still a formidable force. This campaign season, Basil knows, must be different. It must be decisive. It must be final. The stage is set for one of the most remarkable military engagements in medieval history. Let's examine the political landscape that makes this battle so crucial. The Byzantine Empire, in 1014, is not the invincible colossus it appears on maps. Beneath the surface, cracks threaten to shatter the entire structure. In Constantinople, Basil's political enemies circle like sharks scenting blood. The powerful aristocratic families, the Phocas, the Skleros, the Malinoi, resent this emperor who refuses to marry, who denies them power, who spends more time in military camps than in the palace. They have rebelled before. Bardas Phocas and Bardas Skleros, two of the empire's most powerful generals, led massive civil wars against Basil in the 980s and 990s. Though defeated, their families and supporters remain influential, waiting for any sign of weakness. One major military disaster, and these vultures will descend. The Macedonian dynasty that Basil represents could crumble overnight, replaced by military strongmen or aristocratic councils that would tear the empire apart fighting over scraps. The stakes could not be higher. This is not merely about conquering Bulgaria, but about securing Basil's throne and the future stability of the Byzantine state itself. The military situation is equally precarious. Basil's army is professional, well-trained, and experienced, but it is not unlimited. The themes, provincial military districts, can provide soldiers, but not endlessly. Each campaign season drains resources, depletes manpower, and strains the imperial treasury. Meanwhile, threats multiply on every frontier. To the east, the Fatimid Caliphate poses a constant danger. Arab raiders probe Byzantine defenses in Syria and Anatolia, forcing Basil to maintain substantial garrisons far from the Bulgarian front. In southern Italy, Lombard princes and Muslim emirates fight over Byzantine territories, requiring military intervention. Even the Mediterranean itself has become dangerous, with Arab pirates disrupting trade routes that feed Constantinople's 1 million inhabitants. This is why the Bulgarian War must end now. The empire cannot sustain another decade of annual campaigns. Resources that should defend other frontiers are being poured into the Balkan mountains. The economic strain grows more severe each year. Victory, complete, decisive victory, is not just militarily desirable, but strategically essential. Tsar Samuel understands this desperation, and he has prepared accordingly. His intelligence network reports Basil's movements. His spies in Constantinople send word of political tensions. Samuel knows that if he can simply hold out long enough, if he can inflict one more major defeat on Byzantine forces, the political pressure on Basil might force a negotiated peace, or even better, trigger a civil war that would leave Bulgaria unmolested for a generation. So Samuel has chosen his ground carefully. The pass at Kleidion represents everything Bulgaria needs. Natural defenses, supply routes to the rear, terrain that neutralizes Byzantine cavalry superiority, and fortifications built over months of preparation. Here, Samuel believes, he will break Basil's final offensive and secure Bulgaria's independence for decades to come. He has 45,000 reasons to be confident. Dawn breaks on July 29th, revealing the full scope of what Basil faces. The pass at Kleidion is not merely defended. It is transformed into a killing ground engineered specifically to destroy invading armies. Imagine standing at the Byzantine camp, looking up toward the Bulgarian positions. The terrain itself is your enemy. The pass narrows to barely 300 yards at its tightest point, funneling any attacking force into a confined space where numbers become a liability rather than an advantage. Steep slopes rise on either side, rocky and forested, seemingly impossible to climb with any significant force. The Bulgarians have enhanced these natural advantages with months of engineering work. Wooden palisades, 10 feet high and reinforced with earth and stone, block the pass at multiple points. Behind these walls, wooden towers provide elevated positions for archers, giving them clear fields of fire over any approaching army. Sharpened stakes are driven into the ground at angles designed to impale cavalry and break infantry formations. Ditches have been dug to channel attackers into predetermined kill zones. The Bulgarian force defending this position represents the cream of Samuel's military power. Intelligence reports, gathered from deserters and captured scouts, provide Basil with a breakdown that should make any commander reconsider his entire strategy. 15,000 heavy infantry form the core. These are professional soldiers equipped with chain mail armor, round shields, and long spears. They have fought in dozens of battles against Byzantine forces and know exactly how the Empire's armies operate. These men will hold the fortification walls, presenting an armored wall of shields and spear points that must be broken through before any progress can be made. 20,000 light cavalry and skirmishers provide flexibility and shock power. These warriors can rapidly respond to threats, reinforce weak points, and launch counterattacks against any Byzantine forces that manage to breach the defenses. On the rugged slopes flanking the pass, they move with the agility of mountain goats, able to strike and fade before Byzantine heavy infantry can respond. 10,000 archers and support troops man the towers and elevated positions. These men carry composite bows, capable of punching through armor at 200 yards. With the high ground and prepared positions, they can rain arrows on attacking forces with devastating accuracy. Byzantine soldiers have learned to fear Bulgarian archers. Their skill with the bow is legendary throughout the Balkans. The supply situation favors the defenders completely. Bulgarian logistics officers have stockpiled weeks of food, water, and ammunition within the fortifications. Even if Basil attempts a siege, Samuel's men can hold out indefinitely while Byzantine supplies, dragged through hostile territory, dwindle to nothing. Every military manual would dictate the same response to this situation. Do not attack fortified positions without overwhelming numerical superiority, extensive siege equipment, or a clear path to outflank the defenses. Basil has none of these advantages. He is outnumbered, lacks siege engines, and the terrain appears to eliminate any possibility of flanking maneuvers. By every rational calculation, Basil should retreat, regroup, and seek an alternative route or strategy. Any competent commander would recognize this as an unwinnable position. But Basil II is not any commander. Inside the Byzantine command tent, tension crackles like electricity before a thunderstorm. The morning sun filters through canvas walls, illuminating maps spread across wooden tables. Senior officers cluster around these maps, their faces grim as they absorb the latest intelligence reports. Theophylact Botaniatis, strategos of the Thessaloniki theme and one of Basil's most experienced commanders, speaks first. His voice carries the weight of decades of military service. Emperor, the scouts have confirmed our worst fears. The Bulgarian positions are stronger than we anticipated. Our numerical disadvantage, combined with their fortifications, makes a frontal assault suicide. I recommend we withdraw, find another pass, or wait for reinforcements. Around the table, heads nod in agreement. These are not cowards or inexperienced officers. They are veterans who have fought beside Basil in countless campaigns. Their agreement on the hopelessness of the situation carries enormous weight. Constantine Diogenes, commander of the Anatolian contingent, adds his voice. The men are willing to fight, Majesty, but they are not blind. They can see what we face. Morale will collapse if we order a frontal assault against those walls. We could lose not just this battle, but the entire army. Nicephorus Xiphias, perhaps Basil's most trusted general, remains silent. His eyes move between the maps and the Emperor's face, reading the calculation happening behind those weathered features. Xiphias knows Basil better than anyone in this tent. He has served under the Emperor for 20 years, from the civil wars to the Bulgarian campaigns. He recognizes that look. The Emperor is not listening to their objections. He is solving a problem. Basil's finger traces lines on the map, following the contours of the Belasitsa mountains. The other officers assume he is looking for alternative routes, escape paths, ways to retreat with dignity intact. They are wrong. When Basil finally speaks, his voice is calm, almost conversational. The Bulgarian positions are indeed formidable from the front. Samuel has prepared well. He expects us to either attack his fortifications directly, which would be foolish, or to retreat and seek another route. Both responses play into his strategy. He pauses, letting the officers absorb this. Then his finger stabs down on the map, pointing to the mountains flanking the pass. But he has made an assumption. He believes these slopes are impassable to any significant force. Therefore, his rear defenses will be minimal, focused on preventing small raiding parties rather than a major assault. The tent falls absolutely silent. Every officer present understands what Basil is suggesting, and the audacity of it steals their breath. Theophylact finds his voice first. Emperor, those mountains. The scouts report near vertical cliffs, dense forest, ravines that could swallow entire companies. Even if a small force could navigate them, moving enough men to make a difference would take days, maybe weeks. The Bulgarians would detect the movement and respond. Not if we move quickly, Basil responds. Not if we move tonight in darkness, with a hand-picked force of our best mountain troops. Xiphias will command! Xiphias straightens, his expression shifting from concern to fierce determination. He steps forward to examine the map more closely, already calculating routes and logistics. How many men? Take 5,000 of our best climbers. The Anatolian theme troops, the Armenian contingents, anyone with mountain warfare experience. Travel light. No heavy equipment. Your objective is to reach the heights above the Bulgarian rear positions by dawn and attack at midday tomorrow. When the Bulgarians turn to face your assault, I will launch our main force against their front. Caught between two attacks, their advantage in fortifications becomes irrelevant. The plan is insane. Every officer knows it. A night march through impossible terrain, splitting an already outnumbered force, betting everything on perfect timing and the element of surprise. 1,000 things could go wrong. The flanking force could get lost in the mountains. They could be detected. The attack could fail to penetrate the rear defenses. The main assault could collapse before the flanking force engages. But looking at Basil's face, at the absolute certainty in his eyes, the officers realize something profound. Their emperor is not gambling. He has calculated every variable, considered every risk, and concluded that this insane plan offers better odds than any alternative. More than that, he believes it will work with the unshakable faith of a man who has staked his entire reign on his military judgment. Xiphias salutes crisply. It will be done, Majesty. 5,000 men, the heights by dawn, attack at midday. The other officers, seeing Xiphias commit, find their own courage. If the plan is madness, it is at least madness with a purpose, and they have followed this emperor through too many impossible situations to doubt him now. As the council disperses to begin preparations, Constantine Diogenes lingers for a moment. Majesty, if this fails... Basil meets his gaze steadily. If this fails, we die here in these mountains, and Bulgaria remains unconquered. But it will not fail. I have waited 28 years for this moment. Samuel thinks he knows me, thinks he has predicted my every move. Tomorrow, he discovers he was wrong. As darkness falls on July 29th, 5,000 Byzantine soldiers begin one of the most audacious military maneuvers in medieval warfare history. Nicephorus Xiphias stands at the head of the column, watching as men check equipment one final time. Every unnecessary item has been stripped away. Heavy shields left behind, armor reduced to essentials, supplies cut to bare minimum. Speed and stealth are everything now. The soldiers selected for this mission are not ordinary troops. These are men from the mountain themes of Anatolia and Armenia, raised in terrain as rugged as what they now face. These are scouts who have tracked enemies through forests and over cliffs. These are veterans who have fought in a dozen campaigns and survived through skill and endurance. Still, looking up at the dark mass of the Belasica Mountains, even these hardened warriors feel fear's cold touch. Xiphias addresses them in a low voice that carries just far enough. You all know what we face. 5 miles through mountains that most men would call impassable. We must reach the heights above the Bulgarian rear by dawn, remain hidden throughout the morning, and attack at exactly midday. The Emperor and 15,000 of our brothers are counting on us. Bulgaria's fate hangs on what we do in the next 12 hours. He pauses, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled faces. I will not lie to you. Some of us will not survive this night. The mountains will claim men through falls, exhaustion, injury. But those who reach our objective will participate in a victory that will be sung about for centuries. Bulgaria has terrorized our empire for half a century. Tomorrow, we end that threat forever. For Byzantium, for the emperor, for glory. A low murmur of determination answers him. These men did not volunteer for a safe posting. They came to make history. The column moves out at midnight, guided by local hunters who know secret paths through the mountains. What follows is a nightmare journey that tests human endurance to its absolute limits. The first hour passes in relative ease. The lower slopes, though steep, offer clear paths through pine forests. Men move in near-total silence, communicating through hand signals and whispered warnings. The night air is cool, almost pleasant after the summer day's heat. Then, the real climb begins. The paths narrow to bare traces, sometimes disappearing entirely. In the darkness, every step becomes an act of faith. Men feel their way forward, hands grasping for tree roots and rock outcroppings. The clink of armor and weapons sounds impossibly loud in the mountain silence, and officers hiss constant reminders to muffle equipment. By the second hour, the first casualties occur. A soldier misses his footing on loose scree, sliding 20 feet down a slope before catching himself on a tree trunk. His leg is broken, bone protruding through skin. Medics bind the wound as best they can in darkness, and the man is left behind with supplies and a prayer. He will not be the last. The third hour brings the worst section. A ravine that must be crossed, where the path has collapsed into a stream below. Engineers rig rope lines across the gap, and men cross one at a time, arms and legs wrapped around the rope, dangling over a drop that would mean certain death. The crossing takes 90 precious minutes, and 3 men fall when ropes fray under weight. Their screams are mercifully brief. By the fourth hour, exhaustion becomes the real enemy. Men stumble like drunkards, legs shaking with fatigue, lungs burning from the thin mountain air. Ingenious moves constantly along the column, offering encouragement, helping struggling soldiers, pushing the pace when men slow. There is no time for rest. Dawn approaches, and with it, the risk of discovery. The fifth hour brings unexpected relief. The paths level out as the column reaches a high plateau. But this plateau is exposed, visible from the valleys below if anyone looks up. Speed becomes critical. 5,000 men move as quickly as their exhausted bodies allow, knowing that in an hour, dawn will reveal their position if they have not reached cover. As the eastern sky begins to pale with pre-dawn light, Zephyus receives a report from his scouts that makes his heart soar. They have reached the target, a forested ridge overlooking the Bulgarian rear positions. Below, barely visible in the growing light, enemy campfires twinkle. The rear guard, minimal and unprepared, has no idea that 5,000 Byzantine warriors now crouch in the trees above them. Zephyus allows himself a moment of fierce satisfaction. The impossible march is complete, against all odds. Through terrain that should have stopped them, his men have reached their objective. Now they must rest, remain hidden throughout the morning, and prepare for the attack that will change everything. Behind him, soldiers collapse in exhaustion, grabbing a few precious hours of sleep. Officers move among them, ensuring silence, posting guards, preparing weapons. The easy part is over. Now comes the battle. Dawn on July 30th, 1014, breaks over the Kleidion Pass with deceptive beauty. Golden sunlight spills across the fortifications, warming the faces of Bulgarian guards who have stood watch through the night. In the Bulgarian camp, soldiers wake to another day of garrison duty. Some heat breakfast over small fires. Others check weapons and armor with the casual routine of men who expect no immediate danger. Tsar Samuel emerges from his command tent to survey his domain. At nearly 70 years old, his body carries the accumulated injuries of a lifetime of warfare. Old wounds ache in the morning chill. Joints protest when he moves too quickly, but his mind remains sharp and his confidence is absolute. He has chosen his ground perfectly. His fortifications are impregnable. His army outnumbers the Byzantine force decisively. Within days, perhaps hours, Basil will recognize the futility of assault and withdraw, giving Samuel another year of independence and another chance to rebuild his offensive capacity. Bulgarian officers gather for morning briefing, discussing routine matters. Supply inventories, guard rotations, minor disciplinary issues. There is no sense of urgency, no atmosphere of impending combat. This is an army that believes it has already won simply by occupying an unassailable position. In the rear positions, overlooking the less defended approaches where steep mountains provide natural protection, guards are particularly relaxed. A few sentries scan the slopes out of habit, rather than expectation. The prevailing wisdom is clear. No significant force could approach from those directions. The real threat, if it comes at all, will be against the heavily fortified front. This complacency is exactly what Basil has counted on. High in the forested ridges above these rear positions, 5,000 Byzantine soldiers lie in absolute silence. Xiphias moves among them like a ghost, checking readiness, ensuring weapons are prepared, arrows nocked. Every man knows his assignment. The morning drags with agonizing slowness. Men fight the urge to shift position, to stretch cramping muscles, to cough or clear their throats. Below, so close they can hear Bulgarian conversations, the rearguard goes about its business, oblivious to death crouching above. Meanwhile, at the main Byzantine camp in the valley, Basil conducts his own preparations. 15,000 troops form into assault columns, checking equipment, receiving final instructions from officers. The mood here is tense, but determined. These men know they face a frontal assault against superior numbers and fortifications. Many will die in the coming hours, but they trust their emperor, and they trust Xiphias to deliver the flanking attack that will turn a suicidal assault into a winnable battle. Basil addresses his commanders one final time. Xiphias will attack at midday exactly. When you hear the sounds of battle from the Bulgarian rear, that is our signal. We advance in full force against the front fortifications. The Bulgarians will be forced to divide their attention between two threats. In that moment of confusion, we break them. He pauses, his gaze sweeping across the assembled officers. 30 years I have fought this war. 30 years of campaigns, sieges, raids, and retreats. Today it ends. Today, we crush Bulgaria so completely that they will never threaten our empire again. Today, we avenge every Byzantine soldier who died in these mountains. Today, we show the world that the Roman Empire still knows how to wage war. A roar of approval answers him. These are men who have followed Basil through countless battles, who have seen his tactical genius turn impossible situations into victories. They believe. More importantly, they are ready. As the sun climbs toward its zenith, two armies prepare for combat. One confident in its unassailable position, the other grimly determined to prove that no position is truly unassailable when courage and tactical brilliance combine. The hour of decision approaches. Soon, very soon, the mountain pass will run red with blood. At exactly noon, Nicephorus Xiphias raises his sword. 5,000 Byzantine warriors tense like compressed springs. For one final moment, the world holds its breath. Then Xiphias' sword sweeps down, and chaos erupts across the mountain. The Byzantine flanking force explodes from the tree line like an avalanche. The sound is overwhelming. 5,000 voices raised in the ancient battle cry, Nobiscum Deus! God is with us. Accompanied by the thunder of armored boots on stone, the rattle of weapons and shields, the primal roar of men unleashing hours of pent-up tension in a single explosive release. The Bulgarian rearguard, perhaps 500 men scattered across a quarter-mile of defensive positions, has perhaps 30 seconds of warning. Sentries who moments before were trading jokes and sharing wine turn to see an armored tide descending on them. Their shouts of alarm are drowned out by the Byzantine war cry. They scramble for weapons, trying to form defensive lines, but there is no time, no space, no chance. The impact when 5,000 charging warriors hit 500 unprepared defenders is not a battle. It is an execution. Byzantine troops crash through token resistance like a hammer through parchment. Guards are simply swept away, trampled or cut down before they can raise shields. Wooden palisades designed to stop frontal assaults provide no protection against attack from above and behind. Within minutes, the entire rear defensive line ceases to exist. But Xiphias does not allow his men to stop and consolidate. This is the crucial moment. Before Bulgarian forces can react and organize a coherent response, the Byzantine flanking attack must penetrate deep into their positions, creating maximum chaos and confusion. "Forward!" he roars. "Give them no time to form ranks! Forward for Byzantium!" The charge continues, plunging into the Bulgarian camp itself. Tents are trampled, supply wagons overturned, fires scattered. Bulgarian soldiers, waking to find enemy forces in their midst, react with confusion and panic. Some grab weapons and fight. Others run. Many simply freeze, unable to process the impossible reality that their impregnable fortress has been breached from behind. Down in the valley, Basil hears the distant sounds of combat, screams, the crash of steel, the roar of men in battle. It is the signal he has been waiting for. His own sword rises, then falls. 15,000 Byzantine warriors surge forward toward the main Bulgarian fortifications. This frontal assault is what Samuel has prepared for, what his defensive works were designed to defeat. Bulgarian officers, hearing the Byzantine advance, order their troops to positions. 15,000 heavy infantry move to the walls, shields locked, spears presented, ready to repel the attack. Archers in the towers draw their bows, arrows nocked and ready. For a moment, everything proceeds exactly as Bulgarian planning predicted. Then a messenger arrives at Tsar Samuel's command position, and the world tilts on its axis. "Majesty, enemy forces have breached our rear positions, thousands of them coming from the mountains." Samuel's first reaction is disbelief bordering on rage. "Impossible! The scouts confirmed those slopes are impassable." "They're here, Majesty. The rear guard is destroyed, and Byzantine forces are attacking through our camp." The implications crash down on Samuel like a collapsing building. His forces, positioned and prepared to defend against frontal assault, are now caught between two enemy attacks. He must divide his army, sending troops to counter the rear threat while maintaining the front defenses, but moving troops in the middle of battle, reorganizing defensive positions while under attack from two directions. This is every commander's nightmare. Samuel is too experienced to freeze. Orders fly from his command tent. 10,000 warriors are redirected from front positions to face the Byzantine flanking attack. Another 5,000 are held in reserve to respond to wherever the crisis becomes most acute. But these movements create exactly the chaos and confusion that Basil counted on. Organized defensive lines dissolve into rushing troops trying to reach new positions. Command structure fragments as junior officers make desperate decisions without coordination. In this moment of Bulgarian confusion, Basil's main assault hits the front fortifications. The defenders, their ranks thinned and their attention divided, cannot generate the overwhelming defensive fire that should have slaughtered the attackers. Byzantine troops reach the wooden walls, some with scaling ladders, others simply attempting to tear through the palisades with axes and bare hands. The battle that Samuel expected to win through defensive superiority has transformed into a chaotic melee where his numerical advantage means nothing, and his fortifications are becoming traps rather than protection. The Bulgarian army, caught between hammer and anvil, begins to crack. War has its own terrible momentum, and once an army begins to break, the collapse can be astonishingly swift. What takes years to build, discipline, morale, unit cohesion, command structure, can disintegrate in minutes under the right circumstances. For the Bulgarian army at Kleidion, those circumstances arrive with brutal finality in the early afternoon of July 30th. The double-pronged Byzantine assault has achieved its objective of creating chaos, but chaos alone does not guarantee victory. What happens next determines whether Basil's audacious gambit succeeds or fails. The critical moment comes at the junction between the Bulgarian center and their left wing, where 10,000 troops attempting to redeploy from front to rear positions collide with 5,000 warriors still manning the original defensive works. In the confusion of movement, gaps open in the defensive line. Not large gaps, perhaps only yards wide, but in warfare, yards can be enough. Byzantine assault troops, probing the fortifications for weaknesses, identify these gaps and pour through like water through cracks in a dam. Suddenly, Bulgarian soldiers find themselves fighting not on one side of their fortifications, but on both sides. The psychological impact is devastating. These walls that should protect them have become obstacles trapping them in killing zones. Panic begins as isolated incidents. A unit of Bulgarian infantry, surrounded and cut off, throws down weapons and attempts to surrender. Byzantine troops, their blood running hot with battle rage, show little mercy. The sight of their comrades being slaughtered rather than accepted as prisoners shatters the morale of nearby Bulgarian units. In the rear positions, Zephia's 5,000 warriors have now swelled to nearly 8,000, as elements from the main assault force fight their way through to join the flanking attack. This combined force pushes deeper into the Bulgarian camp, destroying command posts, overrunning supply depots, and most critically, disrupting any attempt by Bulgarian officers to organize coherent resistance. Tsar Samuel himself is forced to relocate his command post 3 times in less than an hour, each time moving further from the front lines, each move communicating to his army that their supreme commander is retreating. The psychological impact on Bulgarian troops is incalculable. If the Tsar himself is withdrawing, what hope remains? By mid-afternoon, isolated Bulgarian units continue to fight with desperate courage, but overall command and control has collapsed. There is no coordinated defense, no mutual support between units, no strategic response to the Byzantine attacks. What remains is merely thousands of individual soldiers or small groups making their own decisions about whether to fight, surrender, or flee. The elite Bulgarian heavy infantry, 15,000 warriors who represent the core of Samuel's military power, find themselves in an impossible situation. Positioned to defend the front fortifications, they are now attacked from behind by Xiphias's force, while still facing pressure from Basil's main assault. These are professional soldiers, men who have fought in dozens of battles, and they do not break easily. For hours, they hold their positions, shields locked, fighting with the grim determination of men who know they are going to die, but refuse to do so without taking enemies with them. But courage without hope is a depleting resource. As afternoon wears into evening, as casualties mount and no relief comes, as they watch other units disintegrate around them, even these hardened warriors begin to falter. First one, then another, then dozens, then hundreds begin to drift away from their positions, not quite fleeing but no longer actively fighting, simply trying to survive. The final blow comes when word spreads through Bulgarian ranks that Tsar Samuel has fled the battlefield. Whether this is actually true at this moment is unclear. Reports conflict, but the perception becomes reality. If their Tsar has abandoned them, they owe no further duty to die in his service. What begins as a trickle of deserters becomes a flood. Suddenly, everywhere, Bulgarian soldiers are running, not in organized retreat but in panicked rout. They drop weapons and shields to run faster. They abandon wounded comrades. They trample each other in their desperation to escape the killing ground. And the Byzantine army, seeing their enemies break, unleashes the most terrifying phase of any battle: the pursuit. This is not war anymore, it is slaughter. Byzantine troops chase fleeing Bulgarians for miles, cutting them down like wheat before a scythe. The mountain slopes become carpeted with bodies. The Struma River runs red with blood, and corpses clog its flow. The Battle of Kleidion has become the Massacre of Kleidion. When the swords finally fall silent at dusk, as exhausted Byzantine soldiers cease their pursuit and begin the grim task of securing the battlefield, the true scale of the catastrophe becomes apparent. 15,000 Bulgarian dead lie scattered across miles of mountain terrain. Some died in organized combat at the fortifications. Others were cut down during the rout. Many simply collapsed from exhaustion during the flight and were overtaken by pursuing Byzantine troops. The concentration of bodies is so dense in some areas that soldiers cannot walk without stepping on corpses. Against this staggering toll, Byzantine casualties seem almost miraculous. Approximately 5,000 dead or seriously wounded from the original 20,000. A heavy price by any standard, but incredibly light given the odds they faced. The exchange rate is 3 Bulgarian dead for every Byzantine casualty, a ratio that any medieval commander would consider an overwhelming victory. The material gains beg a description. An army of 45,000 warriors carries enormous wealth: weapons, armor, horses, gold for paying troops, supplies for sustaining campaigns. In the space of one afternoon, all of this becomes Byzantine property. Basil's quartermasters catalogue the captured equipment for days: 20,000 swords, 30,000 shields, 15,000 mail shirts, uncounted thousands of spears, arrows, and bows. But the most valuable capture is human. 15,000 Bulgarian prisoners fall into Byzantine hands, men too exhausted to flee, too wounded to fight, or who surrendered hoping for mercy. These prisoners represent a significant portion of Bulgaria's remaining military-age male population. Their loss is a demographic catastrophe from which Samuel's kingdom cannot easily recover. For Basil, Looking out over the battlefield as twilight fades tonight, the victory is complete beyond his most ambitious hopes. The Bulgarian army that has challenged Byzantine power for decades is destroyed. The fortifications that seemed impregnable are shattered. The military threat that has consumed 30 years of his reign is eliminated in a single day. But victory brings a terrible question. What to do with 15,000 prisoners? Medieval warfare offers limited options. Releasing them would simply return trained warriors to Bulgaria, allowing Samuel to rebuild his army. Enslaving them would require resources to guard and transport thousands of hostile prisoners. Executing them would be possible, but would brand Basil as a tyrant and monster across the Christian world. Basil chooses a fourth option, one that will earn him both his historical nickname and lasting infamy. He orders that 99 out of every 100 prisoners be blinded, leaving one man in each 100 with a single eye remaining to guide his blinded comrades home. The blinding operation takes days. Byzantine soldiers use heated metal rods to destroy the eyes of prisoner after prisoner. The screams echo through the mountain passes. The horror of the act is deliberate. Basil intends to send a message not just to Samuel, but to anyone who might consider challenging Byzantine power in the future. When the operation is complete, long columns of blinded Bulgarian soldiers begin the journey home. Each group of 99 blind men, led by a single half-blind guide. The sight of these stumbling, groaning columns produces exactly the psychological effect Basil intended. Terror spreads across Bulgaria. This is not just military defeat, it is divine judgment, a punishment so severe it seems to transcend normal warfare. When Tsar Samuel sees the blinded remnants of his army staggering into his court, the shock kills him. Accounts vary on the precise mechanism: heart attack, stroke, or simply the accumulated weight of disaster crushing his will to live. But the result is the same. On October 6th, 1014, less than 3 months after Kleidion, Samuel dies, his empire shattered, his life's work in ruins. The Bulgarian Empire effectively dies with him. His successors cannot rally the shattered nation. Within 4 years, Bulgaria will surrender completely, becoming a Byzantine province for the next 168 years. The Battle of Kleidion reverberates through history far beyond its immediate military consequences. In the short term, it achieves everything Basil hoped for and more: the complete subjugation of Bulgaria, the security of the empire's Balkan frontiers, and the elimination of a threat that had plagued Byzantium for 2 generations. But Kleidion's significance extends into military theory and practice. In an age where numerical superiority and fortified positions are considered decisive, Basil demonstrates that tactical innovation can overcome both. His flanking maneuver through supposedly impassable terrain becomes a case study taught in military academies for centuries. Napoleon Bonaparte will study Kleidion as an example of how to defeat a numerically superior, fortified enemy. German staff officers in the 19th century will analyze the battle's logistics and timing. Even modern special forces operations draw lessons from Xiphias' night march through hostile terrain. The psychological warfare component, the mass blinding of prisoners, proves equally significant. Though in more controversial ways, medieval commanders learn that extreme brutality can break an enemy's will to resist more effectively than battlefield victories alone. This lesson, while effective, contributes to an escalation of war crimes and atrocities that scar medieval warfare. For Basil personally, Kleidion represents the culmination of his life's work. The emperor who took the throne at 18 amid political chaos, who survived civil wars and foreign invasions, who spent 3 decades grinding down Bulgarian resistance, finally achieves total victory. He will rule for another 11 years, presiding over the Byzantine Empire at its medieval zenith. His territories stretch from southern Italy to Armenia, from the Danube to Syria. Constantinople becomes the wealthiest city in the Christian world, its treasury overflowing with gold, its armies feared from Baghdad to the Baltic. Basil dies in 1025, having never married, leaving no direct heirs but an empire stronger than any Byzantine ruler since Justinian 500 years earlier. His epitaph, inscribed on his tomb, reflects the identity he forged through decades of warfare. Basil, born in the purple, emperor who, having witnessed the defeat of the Scythians, Bulgarians, died an old man. But the Bulgar-Slayer nickname, earned at Kleidion through the mass blinding, becomes the title by which history remembers him, a testament to how a single day's brutality can define a reign of 4 decades. The brutal irony of Kleidion is that its very completeness contains seeds of future problems. The total destruction of Bulgarian power creates a vacuum in the Balkans that new threats will eventually fill. The Pechenegs, the Cumans, and later the Ottoman Turks will pour into territories that Bulgaria once held. Byzantine resources and attention, no longer focused on the Bulgarian threat, will be insufficient to contain these new invasions. Within a century of Basil's death, the Byzantine Empire will be in steep decline. Devastated by the Battle of Massacre against the Seljuk Turks in 1071, and the catastrophic Fourth Crusade's sack of Constantinople in 1204. The golden age that Kleidion helped create proves temporary, as golden ages always do. But none of this diminishes the achievement of July 30th, 1014, when 20,000 warriors defied mathematics, terrain, and fortifications to shatter an empire. Stand once more in the Kleidion Pass on the evening of July 30th, 1014. The summer sun sets blood red behind the mountains, its light painting the battlefield in shades of crimson and gold. The morning mist that concealed 5,000 climbing warriors has given way to smoke from countless fires. Supply wagons burning, fortifications smouldering, pyres being prepared for the dead. 20,000 Byzantine soldiers, exhausted beyond comprehension, begin the process of victory. Some tend wounds, their own or their comrades'. Others search the battlefield for reusable equipment or valuable plunder. Many simply collapse where they stand, too tired even to celebrate, sleeping the dreamless sleep of men who have survived what should have killed them. Basil II moves among his troops, offering words of encouragement, praising individual acts of courage, ensuring the wounded receive care. At 56, after 38 years of warfare, he has finally achieved what seemed impossible for so long, the complete and total defeat of Bulgaria. Vengeance for the humiliation at Trajan's gate, security for his empire's future. But look closely at the emperor's face in the fading light. There is satisfaction, yes, and relief. But there is also something else. Weariness, perhaps, or a shadow of the cost such victories demand. 15,000 enemy dead. 5,000 of his own men will never see Constantinople again. 15,000 prisoners blinded in an act that will define his legacy as much as the victory itself. This is what history often obscures, that triumph and tragedy, glory and horror, innovation and atrocity are not opposites but companions. The same tactical brilliance that outmaneuvered a fortified army also produced one of medieval warfare's most notorious acts of cruelty. The same determination that persisted through decades of setbacks also created the ruthlessness necessary to order the blinding of 15,000 prisoners. On July 29, 1014, when Basil stood looking at 45,000 Bulgarian warriors behind impenetrable fortifications, the situation appeared hopeless. Every calculation, every military principle, every rational assessment said the position could not be taken by 20,000 men. 24 hours later, those same fortifications lay shattered, that same army destroyed, and the impossible had become inevitable. This is the paradox at Kleidion's heart. Sometimes the difference between impossible and inevitable is nothing more than one man's vision, one night's desperate march, and one moment when audacity trumps arithmetic. When dawn broke on July 29th, Bulgaria's empire stood intact, defended by fortified positions and overwhelming numbers. When the sun set on July 30th, that empire was finished, its army broken, its future extinguished. Between those two sunrises, 20,000 warriors proved that walls can be circumvented, numbers can be outmaneuvered, and that the greatest military advantage of all is not numerical superiority or defensive positions, but the willingness to attempt what others deem impossible. The Battle of Kleidion teaches a lesson that transcends its specific tactical details, that innovation conquers inertia, that audacity defeats complacency, that vision, both literal and metaphorical, determines destiny more than mere arithmetic ever can. Basil II understood this truth on a hot summer day in the Belasica Mountains he proved it beyond any doubt. The Bulgarians called him Bulgar-Slayer. History remembers him as one of the greatest military commanders of the medieval age, but perhaps the most accurate title would be simpler: the man who refused to accept that impossible meant impossible.